Welcome all to a new session on evolution, and this presentation will be discussing on history of evolutionary thought. Whenever we speak about evolution, the first name to come to our mind will be that of Charles Darwin. And obviously, it is because of his huge contribution made into the study of evolution. And centered around Darwin's name, evolutionary history can be divided into three periods: Darwinian period, and post-Darwinian period. Darwinian period, it is the period of speculations or guesses, and it extends from Greek thinkers to the end of 18th century. While Darwinian period, it is the period of observations and inferences and stretched throughout the 19th century. Post-Darwinian period, on the other hand, it is considered to be the modern period of experimentation, and it began with the 20th century. So, the pre-Darwinian period, who all were the evolutionary thinkers and what were their contributions? This is what we are going to discuss. Now, when we speak about the evolutionary idea on evolution contributed, we can see that we can divide into two sets, like early Greek thinkers and the evolutionists of medieval age. Okay. Now, when we speak about the early Greek thinkers, highly speculative ideas on evolution were offered by early Greek thinkers like Thales, Anaximander, Xenophanes, Empedocles, Aristotle, and each one had made their own contributions. Um, Thales suggested that life originated in water, suggested aquatic origin of life, and all life originated in water. Anaximander, who also lived in the 6th century BC, thought that men were first formed as fishes and later cast off their fish skins and took up life on dry land. Um, Anaximander explained the origin of what they call universe, and according to him, living things came from primordial fluid, and also explained how men were formed. That is, men were first formed as fishes and later cast off their fish skins and took up life on dry land. Xenophanes of the 5th century BC was the first to recognize that fossils represent the remains of animals that once lived, and he is credited with being the first person to recognize the importance of fossils in the study of evolution. The fossils, such as petrified shells embedded in rocks, represented the remains of animals that once lived. He also realized that the presence of fossils of marine animals on what is now the dry land indicates that sea once covered the area, and he believed that in ancient times earth was covered with water where the life began. Empedocles, we can see that he hailed by Osborn as the father of evolution idea, and he suggested that plants and later animals arose out of the earth. Um, that is some kind of a spontaneous generation he believed in. Uh, According to him, life arose spontaneously but gradually, and change would result when forces, the attraction and repulsion forces, interact with each other. And based on this, he further explained that living things were cast out in the form of separate parts, and by chance, these parts were united by attraction forces, and as a result, plants and animals were born. The sex originated later, and through reproduction, the developing embryo resulted from both paternal and maternal substances, and in that fashion, distinct species were formed. He believed that when reproduction was established, Earth felt the need of special creation of organisms, and according to Empedocles, plants came earlier than animals, and perfect forms replaced imperfect types. Aristotle discarded Empedocles' view, and he observed that organisms could be arranged in graded series from lower to higher, and the lower stage is the inorganic. Organic beings arose from the inorganic by direct metamorphosis. He conceived the organic world to be consisting of three states, that is, plants, plant animals, and animals, characterized by the sensibility. Within the animal groups, he constructed a genetic series leading from the lowest form up to man, the man being placed at the apex. Uh, Aristotle is considered to be father of family tree, and from the taxonomic fact, he drew the correct inference that one higher group evolved from other lower one in the taxonomic series. However, he had the metaphysical belief that the gradual evolution of living things occurred because nature strives to change from the simple and imperfect to the more complex and perfect. So, these were the thoughts put forward by the Greek thinkers, and until Xenophanes, Aristotle failed to appreciate, unlike Xenophanes, Aristotle failed to appreciate the true significance of fossils. So that was the only drawback of Aristotelian thought. Now, coming to the evolutionists of medieval age, for about 20 centuries since Aristotle, no remarkable contribution was added to the idea of evolution until the medieval evolutionists of medieval age, like we had Descartes, Bonnet, Kant, Bacon, who revived the idea of evolution. Now, the theory of spatial creation came into prominence and remained valid till the middle of the 19th century. And according to this theory, organisms were created by some supernatural power either once or at successive intervals. And from the day of creation, these organisms exist unchanged. So that was a theory of spatial creation. And the major proponent was a Spanish monk, Father Suarez, and he was one of the greatest advocates of the theory of spatial creation. And he based this concept on the biblical book of Genesis. The concept of organic evolution was revived in the later part of 18th century as a result of the emergence of great naturalists such as Linnaeus, Buffon, Erasmus Darwin, Lamarck, and Cuvier. Linnaeus, the Swedish botanist, is the father of modern classification. He introduced the binomial nomenclature of plants for plants and animals. However, Linnaeus was a strong advocate of special creation and believed that all species were created as we see them today. Without any change, the species have been surviving on Earth from the day it was created. Now, Buffon, on the other hand, the French biologist, was the first modern biologist to discard the concept of spatial creation, which was put forward through the theory of spatial creation. Uh, Erasmus Darwin, grandfather of Charles Darwin, gave the first glimpse of the idea of inheritance of acquired characteristics, which was later perfected by Lamarck. He also believed in the struggle of existence, and he stated that evolution of all forms of life occurred from a single protoplasmic mass and that millions of years were required for evolution to take place. So it is not possible for a single individual to observe the evolutionary process. Now, Lamarck, who was a famous French biologist, is a remarkable figure in evolutionary history because of his uh, first theory logically developed on evolution. His theory is based on two main principles, namely theory of use and disuse and the inheritance of acquired characteristics. Although Lamarckism is discarded now, Lamarck is considered as the founder of the first complete theory of evolution. The theory of use and disuse and theory of inheritance of acquired characters were the major contributions from Lamarck. Georges Cuvier, well known for his studies on comparative anatomy and paleontology, is credited with a theory of catastrophism or cataclysms. This theory states that there are periodic destructions of the existing organisms due to catastrophes like volcanic eruptions, floods, upheavals, etc., and that new and higher species were created at the end of these cataclysms. He believed that fossils were formed as a result of such catastrophes. Cuvier was also an ardent creationist, and his views were partly responsible for the retardation of the progress of evolutionary concept during that period. So, these were the contributions from various evolutionists of the medieval age. And by the end of 18th century, I suppose there had been a major contribution from Erasmus Darwin and obviously by Lamarck. Okay, and then came the Darwinian period of evolution. Charles Darwin, the founder of modern theory of evolution, is a very important figure in the evolutionary history. Uh, and in his book, The Origin of Species, Darwin gave abundant evidences in favor of organic evolution and explained that natural selection is the main cause for the origin of species in nature. A contemporary naturalist of Darwin's time, Alfred Russel Wallace, independently made similar observations as Darwin did, based on his studies on Malayan archipelago. Uh, and he came up later. Wallace was associated with Darwin and became a co-author of the theory of natural selection. Uh, Darwin's like concept on evolution was not accepted by uh, most of the religious leaders, and he had to face a strong criticism. But in spite of all this, Darwinism was accepted with great enthusiasm by most 19th century biologists, particularly in England, United States, and Germany. In England, the team was led by Herbert Spencer, who was a strong supporter of Lamarckism, and T.H. Huxley. Uh, in the United States, David Starr and Asa Gray were the leaders, and the famous German biologists, evolutionists of this period were Ernst Haeckel and August Riemann. Haeckel was an ardent follower of Darwin and introduced the theory of recapitulation. August Riemann, he was another supporter of Darwin and postulated the theory of continuity of germplasm, which proved to be the greatest blow to Lamarckism later. And here in this figure, you can see the what do you call it voyage taken by Charles Darwin in his very famous HMS Beagle voyage, and he had passed through many places, many spots where he had uh, made collections, extensive collections of plants and animals. Observations he had made, especially his studies on Galapagos Islands, were the most interesting one. And this is what was compiled in The Origin of Species. Okay, so while the primary purpose of the Beagle's voyage was um, to survey and map the coast of South America, but Darwin had taken up the task to make scientific observations of the plants and animals, and most of the time he spent on the dry land. He made observations, and these observations were compiled to make up the his book, The Origin of Species, later. Now, now, what happened in the post-Darwinian period? Obviously, post-Darwinian period is a period of modern synthesis, and in the 20th century, evolutionary ideas were subjected to experimental studies in the light of the knowledge of that emerged out in heredity. The rediscovery of Mendel's laws of inheritance in the beginning of 28th century gave the necessary stimulus and inputs. Simultaneously, Hugo de Vries, who had proposed mutation theory, described that sudden, large heritable changes, that is what we know as mutations, were responsible for evolution. And he believed that some of the mutants were actually new species produced at a single step. Uh, while he was working and experimenting in the lab. And since then, mutations were considered as a driving force in evolution. Uh, Mutations and other contributions from genetics were soon incorporated in the study of natural selection, and evolution was redefined as a change in the gene frequency. We had contributions from R.A. Fisher, then we have J.B.S. Haldane, it is J.B.S. Haldane, then C. Walwright, and Dobzhansky, Ernst Mayr, G.G. Simpson, and Moto Kimura, and we had the Gould and Eldridge, the punctuated equilibrium concept. Uh, Shevchenko made the most complete application of genetics to the study of variations in population. The British scientist Fisher, in his book The Genetical Theory of Natural Selection, he made the first attempt to harmonize Darwin's observation on natural selection with the Mendelian genetics. And J.B.S. Haldane published the book The Causes of Evolution. And uh,